Dr. Heilige Gemara. Dr. Heilige Gemara. We learned yesterday that we had different pshatim in the machlokes between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda about kachim. And what Rabbi Meir said was kachim b'shoigig. If you use moy shel haktik b'shoigig to the chalash and isha, it doesn't work. And if you use it b'mezid, it doesn't. And the Gemara learned pshat in Rabbi Meir originally. Rabbi Yochanan learned pshat in Rabbi Meir was that there's going to be me'ilah, and therefore it goes l'chulin, and therefore there's a Kiddushin. But if you did it b'shogeg, we say that he wouldn't have wanted, and she wouldn't have wanted it. For sure, she wouldn't have wanted. She wouldn't have wanted hektish to be l'chul al yadah, and could be even he wouldn't have wanted. That was the svara that we learned till today from Rabbi Yochanan. But Omar Rav said, I don't think I like this svara of Rabbi Yochanan. Why? Because of Rav, because Chazarnu al kol stodin shal Rabbi Meir. We looked around all over Shas to see what Rabbi Meir said. V'loy motzinu, we not once found that Rabbi Meir should say that hektish b'shoigig ein mischalo and memezid mischalo. We never found anywhere this distinction that b'shoigig hektish is not mischalo because a person wouldn't want. We never found anything like that. As Rashi says, a very top Rashi on Daf Nun Daled Amud Aleph. Kloimar, Afal Pisha Shaninu l'Rab Meir b'shoigig lo kidesh. Even though in our Mishnah we do have a halacha that says that if someone b'shoigig tries to be mekadosh a woman with moy shel hektish, the Kiddushin doesn't work. Lo mishum nesvir lo hektish b'shoigig ein mischalo. It's not because of Rabbi Yochanan's reason. Because if it's b'shoigig, it's not mischal because a person doesn't really want the Kiddushin. Shechazarnu b'chol mokim sheshon Rabbi Meir b'hilchos hektish. We looked all over Shas. Any place Rabbi Meir said anything about hilchos hektish, we didn't find anywhere where Rabbi Meir should say that hektish is mischal b'mezid and not b'shoigig, like Rabbi Yochanan claimed. Ela bein b'shoigig, bein b'mezid mischal, and therefore v'lesnahu lahani time with Rabbi Yochanan. We don't agree with Rabbi Yochanan, and that's the Rabbi Yochanan's explanation of Rabbi Meir. We disagree with. The Rabbi Meir yesh me'ilah b'moy hektish. According to Rabbi Meir, there's me'ilah b'moy hektish. So then, if that's the case, why in our Mishnah did Rabbi Meir say that you're not moil b'shegel? Zakt Gemara Mashnaseinu, and our Mishnah is speaking in a very specific case, and in a very specific case, there's an exclusion to the hilchos me'ilah, and me'ilah won't be noyig b'shegel. And where is that? Because nois kahuna shalai. We're talking about the begadim of a kohen that are not worn out yet. And why is it relevant that's not worn out? Because as Rashi says, u'ru'uyin la'avoida, they can be used for avoida. So Rashi b'chol zman sheru'uyin la'avoida, as long as these begadim can still be used to do the avoida, ein me'ilah b'shogeg. There's a special carve out that b'shogeg there's no me'ilah. Shalakach huktashu mitchila. Originally, when they were hukdash to do the avodah in, they were done on the almanas lehenes behen shogegin. So you should be able to be mahan nehena from these beggars b'shogeg. The only prohibition is rak shelo yischaven l'chal. You shouldn't be amazed. Use them for your own hana. Why did they make such a carve out that b'shoyig there shouldn't be meila? Because if there was meila b'shoyig, it would be impossible for a kohen not to be moil. The Torah wasn't given to malachim who could be perfect. The moment they finish doing the avodah, if they wear the beged a nanosecond more, they're going to be over meila. How could we possibly expect a human to boom have it off the moment he's finished the avodah? That would be impossible. So how come they're not moil? The teretz is they became hektish that they won't be meila on these begotten b'shoyim. Back into the Gemara, v'nitnu lehonush ben l'vishloi nitnu Torah l'malachei. So now our Mishnah that says, according to Meir, if you try to be makdish a woman with hektish, it doesn't mean moisek. It means with big day kahuna. Big day kahuna, there's a special carve out that b'shoyig there's no din meila. Why? Because if b'shoyig there was a din meila, there wouldn't be a kohen who was moil. It would be impossible. But this carve out was only for shoyig; it was not for mezid, and therefore Zokar Meir the mezid there would be meila. Tashma, Kosnois Kahuna. So now this tells us a huge chiddush. We always were under the impression that b'mezid there's no din meila. Reb Meir is going to have to argue on this halal that we always have, that when it comes to meila, it only works for shoyig. Reb Meir is going to hold that meila works for mezid, according to what Rav is saying. Zok Gemara Tashma, Kosnois Kahuna Shabalu, Ma'alam B'Hem Divrei Reb Meir. So here it says that you are moil. My love, afilu loy balu. Let's say even if it was loy balu, why would there be a difference? Zok Gemara, no, loy balu davka. Once it's balu, Zok Rashi, the chiman de ein ruin lavoida. Now they're no longer roy lavoida. So there no longer is a carve out for shoygig not being over. Therefore, Hareya and Kishar Hektish, and therefore, you're not allowed to have enough from them, even Mishoy. Toshma, break the Marakash. So you're now saying that Reb Meir holds that whenever it's whenever you have a scenario where it's virtually impossible for a human not to be Arba Mila, there'll be a carve out for a Shoy. Well, we have a problem because we see from a brisa that Reb Meir does not say like that. Toshma. There were shkolim that were brought on an annual basis by every person in Klal Yisrael to contribute to the Beis Hamikdash, specifically for the Karbanos Tzibur. Now, you had to bring in your shkolim by a certain deadline. It was by Echad Benisa. I mean, there's a shayla in the Rishonim what the cutoff date is. But generally speaking, the cutoff date is Echad Benizon, and if you didn't get your shekel in on time and you came late, instead of putting it in the main pushka from which they would take a truma to buy their karbonis with, it was put into a special pushka that was called tiklin atikin, old coins, meaning coins that came late. And if you don't bring on time, you still owe the shekel, but you put it into a special pushka that was there extra. Now, they didn't buy karbonis with that. They bought other things. So let's see Rashi. They were shofars because these pushkas were in the shape of a cone. And they put shkolim. On the one it said new coins, and therefore when we shaloi shekel shikloi by ador, but if you didn't get your shekel in by ador, shemaviyah b'seich shnosai, you have to bring it within the year. Nois noi l'soicha, he puts it in to the taklin chadatin, and then the gizbarim nois l'oisai b'lishka, and the gizbarim take all of the taklin chadatin, and they put it in a special room, and then 3 times a year, once before Pesach, once before Shavuos, and once before Sukkot. And then they took from those coins to buy their kabbalah. But it was sheni on the other pushka, kasuv, happened the ticket. Umishal shakal ishtakat. Oh, so Rashi saying not if they missed the cutoff of Nisa, rather if they didn't bring shkolim at all last year, when they bring their shekel hopefully on time to next year, they bring an extra shekel with them for last year. They would put it into the shofar labeled old shkolim. Those those go to an extra lishka, and that is going to be used for what we'll identify shortly. So Toshma Moilim Bechaditin Vein Moilim Batikin, and your mayor Omer Mo'alan Af Batikin. Your mayor holds your moil and all of them. So now we need to know, what do you do with those coins? Where mayor says your moil. Shahayer Mayor Omer Mo'alan B'Shiyari Alishka. You are moil with the coins that we call the Shiyari Alishka, the leftover from the Lishka. Now, what do they do with those coins? So these coins, these taklin atikin, they were added to the shiori alishka. What is the definition of shiori alishka? The taklin chaditin were put into a lishka, and then from that lishka, that big room full of money, they would take some of it, called trumas alishka, and with that, some of the money, they would buy kabbalas. But there's a whole bunch of leftover money. A and B is the money from the taklin atikin. What was done with that money? So to Gemara, it'll tell us that they bought tzorchei ha'ir. They bought things that are needed for the community. And let's see Rashi. They have the status of the extra ones that are not going to be used to buy karbanos. What did they do with them? They would strengthen or fix the walls of the city, municipal needs. And its towers, I guess the defense towers, or any other municipal needs. Like we will see later. Because Rabbi Yehuda held that there is no me'ilah in Shiar Lishka. That extra money you were not moil on. Why not? So let's have a look. So Rabbi Meir said you could be moil on money that's going to be used for municipal needs. Good morning. The effect Gemara, we start at 6:35. 5:35. So Zok Gemara Vamai. Nema Hoil V'Nitnu Lehanois. Rabbi Meir has a svara that things that are difficult or superhuman in order to avoid b'shogig, having a know from, there's a carve out for those things, like the big kahuna. But why don't you say that legabe the municipal needs as well? And why would you make that argument? Because what did you buy with these things? You fixed municipal needs. You fixed walls and things like that. They used the money from the Shir Lishka for those expenses. Any municipal need, and it's impossible that someone's not going to have hana from these items, as Rashi says. According to your mayor's logic, you shouldn't be moiling them because your mayor has a svara of lenitna Torah l'malach yesharetz. If you have enough of these things b'shoigig, there shouldn't be a din meila. Why? Since they're being used l'chemas a year, she used reason millions for the chayma. How is it possible that someone can avoid having a no from the wall? For instance, leishav b'tzila, merely walking by the wall when it's sunny, and you go, I'm in the shade, I cool off for a second. That would be meila. Or if you lean against the wall, you sit on the wall. Al korchach, you must say that aval pisha hutra hanos hachayma. Even though the hanos hachayma were usher, or mutter, according to me, they would be mutter if they was done b'shayig. They will be b'kedusha for the other hanos. And the problem is, according to Rabbi Meir, based on the Yosy that we just said, that like did the Torah Malach Yeshoris, how is it consistent with this brisa where Meir said, "My alin af batik"? Zoktamar. So let's change it. Loitemer of Meir elim Rabbi Yehuda. Let's say the Mandamar that says my alin mechartin and my alin af batikin is going according to Rabbi Yehuda, who doesn't have this carve out for, who does not have this carve out for big day kahuna. Let's see what Rashi says. Ema Rabbi Yehuda Amar Mo'alim Batikin Kadamrina b'Masnisin Nami b'Shagin Kiddush. In fact, Rabbi Yehuda did say we're telling on the Mishnah by Ksainis. There's a carve out for a mayor, but you see, Rabbi Yehuda doesn't have that carve out. He says b'Shagin would be Kiddush in this case of Ksainis, and that's what the Mishnah is talking about. Because Rabbi Yehuda holds Afal Pishin Nitnu Kosnois Kahuna Lehanos Lekahanim La'achar Avodah. Even though, in fact, there was a carve out that if Kohanim are doing the avodah and if they keep the beged on for an extra second, there they will not be moil because there is that carve out, and he agrees to Rabbi about that. But in Yishara noise, Rabbi says once we say that Bishogim, they can have enough from these begodim and the Tam Ila, so then no matter what you did with them Bishogim, even if you use them to be Mekadosh a woman with Bishogim, you won't be moil. Rabbi Yehuda no. Just wearing it a little bit extra, that's what the carve out is for. But any other hanal that you would have to show you that you don't have a problem of malach yeshoris that any human could do, which is like using it for Kiddushin. You can't say that it's impossible for a human not to use it for Kiddushin. It's impossible for him not to wear it a little longer after he does the avoid. But Kiddushin he could avoid. So he argues with the mayor, and he holds there avada there would be meal. Therefore, big Kiddushin, umal zavi Kiddushin. And therefore, if someone wants to use the begodim of the kahuna to do kedusha with, that would be a meila, and therefore one of the definitions of meila is that the mois hektish are defiled, they go l'chulin. Avol mezid she'ein by meila, but Rabbi Yehuda holds b'mezid there is no meila. Loy nischala, there the mois would not go l'chulin because by Mezid Me'il doesn't apply, but like Kiddush and the Kiddushin would work. So that all we have to do is change this brisa that we quoted, where Meir said, my Alam Batikin, and we'll say Rabbi Yehuda holds my Alam Batikin, but Rabbi Meir holds anything that there's a certain possibility that it'll be impossible for you to prevent a Me'ilah, so there we completely eliminate Me'ilah Shoyig by such items. What would be examples? Kasna, the Ksainis of the Kohen, and the walls and the municipal structures in the city, those there's no din milah b'shoiging on it because it's impossible to be careful. Gewaltig. Elohim Rabbi Yehuda. Tashma. Once again, we want to challenge this halacha that Reb Meir said that by the Ksoinis, this is this new Kiddushin, the Rav is saying Pshan Reb Meir, that davka by Ksoinis, there's no din milah b'shoiging. Tashma. The Tanya Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yitzchak. Avnei Yerushalayim shenoshu, the stones of Yerushalayim that fell out, I guess they fell out of the wall. The halacha is my alam ben, you will be male. Div Reb Meir. Reb Meir heard the demila. So once again, I have a kasha. Didn't Reb Meir say that anything you cannot avoid being male from? Mishayeg, we completely take away me'ilah shoyeg from that item. So tomorrow, Reb Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. Once again, say that this is Rabbi Yehuda. Frag the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda, if you're going to say that this is all going according to Rabbi Yehuda, Yerushalayim mikdasha, according to Rabbi Yehuda, Yerushalayim isn't even carded. So how could you say that Avnei Yerushalayim, the stones of the city, of the walls of the city of Yerushalayim, have a din hektish, and Moyalim Rabbi Yehuda holds that Yerushalayim doesn't have kedusha at all because it's mechuber lakar. But nan ki imra, kidirim. If someone wants to make a neder, we know you're supposed to be matfis in something. Like you have to say, meaning this thing should be to me like a carbon. So you're matfis, you're comparing it to something else that has an iser. So imra, Rashi is haraya like he goes there ki imra kaseh atomid. He said it should be like the seatomid. Kedirim, which is deer behemesektesh v'dir eitzim, that's where they store the animals, or ke'eitzim like wood, which they use to burn, or ke'ishim, like the things that are brought as karbanis, or Kehecha, or Kemizbeach, or Kirushalayim. These are all examples of ways that you can make a neder. But to Yehuda Omer, there's an exception. Kol Omer Yerushalayim lo yamar klum. So the problem is, how could you tell me that Rabbi Yehuda holds there's me'ilah b'shoygeg on Avnei Yerushalayim? Rabbi Yehuda said that if you say kodim alai davar like Yerushalayim lo yamar klum, because Yerushalayim is not something that there's a me'ilah on. If you're going to say no, Avada he holds as me'ilah on Yerushalayim. The reason why the kodim didn't work is Mishalom Delay Amar Ki Yerushalayim. You should have said this thing should be asked to me like Yerushalayim. Not that it is Yerushalayim. Maybe it was just the syntax that he used. Zok that's not Pshat in Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda has a problem comparing anything to Yerushalayim because Yerushalayim there's no din me'ilah. But Tanya we learned Rabbi Yehuda Omer Kol even Ki Yerushalayim Lo Amar Klum Achi Yoder Bedover Hakarev Yerushalayim. You can be matriz on the carbon on something that you're makrib in Yerushalayim, but the city of Yerushalayim itself, there's no din me'ilah, doesn't have a din kedusha. So I bazari, how could we say that the author of that brayso was Rabbi Yehuda, and that's why your moil be atikin? They're used for to fix the city. They're used for municipal needs. If you just said anything related to the city of Yerushalayim, there's not a kedusha. So once again, who is the author of the brayso that makes a distinction between Taklin Atikin and Taklin Chadin? Sure. I'll check later. So tomorrow, in fact, we'll have to say that there's a machlokes tonight in what Rabbi Yehuda said. As Rashi points out on top, Ikalamand Omar, Yerushalayim, make the Shaka hektish. There's one man who holds that Yerushalayim is Kodesh like hektish, and that's who we're going to have to say the Brisa that says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that the Taklin Atikin are you could be model on them. That's going according to the Rabbi Yehuda. Well, Yerushalayim is Mikdasha. If you took a stone from the wall and you decided you want to build it into your house, molded b'mi'ilah. But we have this last riser who says Yerushalayim is not a good nether. That would be the Rabbi Yehuda who holds that there's no me'ilah on Yerushalayim. Amar Ula Mishmei Debar. Ula said in the name of Bar Pada. Reb Meir. Reb Meir used to say, Hektish b'mezid mischalel b'shoyig ein mischal. Hektish, if you want to make me'ilah, it only works b'mezid, but it would not work b'shoyig. V'loy amar b'shoyig mischal. We never said any possibility of me'ilah to work b'shoyig. Only that you should bring a carbon. Okay, fact Gemara. V'chi me'achar de'ein mischalo. V'chi me'achar de'ein mischalo. If you're saying that b'shoyig there's no chilo, the moish doesn't go to chulin, there's no din me'ilah. Well, then carbon b'mayim chayiv. So why would you be mechuyev a carbon me'ilos and a sham me'ilos? You didn't do me'ilah. So that cannot be an accurate quote from Bar Pada. Ella, what we must say is ki also Rabin, Parish Mishmei de Bar Pada. He was mefarish what really was said, and that is Omer Hayer Reb Meir Hektish b'mezid mischalo. If you are violating Hektish b'mezid, then it's machal the hektish. B'shoyig, when you're over something b'shoyig, ein mischalo, it wouldn't be mischal. When is even a shoyig going to create me'ilah? That's if you actually ate it. As Rashi says, like carbon me'ilah. The Gemara says, no, it doesn't mean like carbon is only nachil. Meaning, the kikar shall hektish, the is only hektish. Somebody eats a kikar of hektish, where the hektish already is gone, because there you can't say the hektish doesn't leave. There is no hektish; it's consumed. But it's not only if you ate it. Any other that you have from hektish, that consumes the hektish. All those will be me'ila. But if you just spent the money of hektish, but physically those coins are still intact, there's no din me'ila b'shogig. They don't leave the rishos of hektish. Gewalt. Amr of Nachman, Amr of Adar Ba'ava. Halacha kerab Meir b'maiser. The halacha like Reb Meir b'maiser, that Reb Meir said that maiser is mammon gavoya, and there's no way you'll be able to be mekadosh a woman with it because it's not your money. Why are we passing like Reb Meir? We're going to find a Stam Mishnah that holds like Reb Meir. And Balacha Kabidu B'Hektish, Rabbi Yehuda says that by Mezit there's no din me'ila, only by Shogig we pass them like that as well. Again, because we have a Stam Mishnah that says like Rabbi Yehuda. So let's find out where these Stam Mishnayos are. Zok to Gemara. Tanya Kavasei. Tanya Kavasei Kama. Kermer b'Maish. Let's find the Mishnah, the Stam Mishnah that says like Kermer b'Maish. Mahi, what is it? It's not be learned. Kerem Revai. We know the halacha is that the first 3 years that pears grow, their arlo, their asabano, you can't use them. But on the 4th year, they have the same status as Maiser Sheni, where you have to be paid to them. You have to be paid to them, and then you take the money to Yerushalayim, or you have to bring them up to Yerushalayim and eat them over there. So Kerem Revai. Now there's a rule. When you're paid to your own Maiser Sheni, you have to add a fifth to it. If you're paid to somebody else's Maiser Sheni, you don't have to add a fifth to it. So Kerem Revai, Zok Beishamai Ein Loi Chamesh Ve'Ein Loi Bir. You don't have to add a fifth to it. Also, Maiser, every 3rd year, you have to get rid of all your excess Maisers. You have to purge them from your household and do with them what's required. Revai doesn't have that either. So clearly, Beishamai holds Revai is not compared to Maiser, because Ein Loi Chamesh Ve'Ein Loi Bir. But Yishla. Because we're going to soon see, because Beis Hillel compares Revai to Maiser Sheni. Another machlokes regarding Revai. Parrot and oilos are the matnas haniyim that you give from a vine. So parrot, Rashi compares to leket, when you're cutting something falls down, and oilos is if it doesn't grow fully, the clusters don't have pesigan. I think those are like the layers, so it's not fully grown. Those are oils that have to be left to Dadi. No, kuloi lagas. You don't have to leave these to Dadi. You can all take them straight to the press. Why? Because it does not have a Kiddushin meiser. Because why is there no chiv meiser on it? Because it's called mammon gavoya. Because we say that it's like meiser. So my time in the Beis Hillel, what's the svara of Beis Hillel, who says that yesh loy chaimesh and yesh loy beer and kuloi lagas, it's gamri kodesh mi meiser. We treat Revai just like meiser. Ma meiser yesh loy chaimesh yesh loy beer. So you see that according to Beis Hillel, we treat Kerem Revai like Meiser, and therefore there's no din matnas kuna on it because it's not yours, it's mammon gavoya. So you see that Beis Hillel holds that Meiser Sheni is mammon gavoya because you see that he learns from Meiser Sheni to Revai that Revai is also mammon gavoya. And Beis Shammai does not learn Kodesh from Meiser. Beis Hillel says that Revai is just like Meiser, and it's Mammon Gavoya. Kaman Svirlu. So who is Beis Hillel saying his shita like? Iker Rabbi Yehuda. If it's like Rabbi Yehuda, Amai Kula Lagas. How could he say that from Meiser and from Revai you don't have to take off Matnas Haniyim? Amar Meiser Mammon Hedjitu. Rabbi Yehuda said that Meiser is Mammon Hedjit, and the better you would be mechuyev to separate Matnas Haniyim from it. Elolav Reb Meir, it must be that Beis Hillel holds like Reb Meir, that the Meiser is Mammon Gavoya, you can't make Kiddushin with it, and who are doing, you're not Muchliv to separate Matnas Aniyah. So the question we have to ask is, this is not a Stam Mishnah, this is a Machlokes Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So why is the Gemara saying that we pass like Reb Meir? Because we have a Stam Mishnah that agrees with Reb Meir. We don't have a Stam Mishnah that agrees with Reb Meir. We have a Beis Hillel that agrees with Reb Meir. Zogt Rashi, Elolav Reb Meir, Beis Hillel Kistam Mishnah Choshev Lahu, Halacha K'Moisa. Having Beis Hillel agree with you is just as good as a Stam Mishnah, because a Stam Mishnah indicates that's how we pass it. You know what? We pass like Beis Hillel. So if you're consistent with Beis Hillel, that means we're going to pass like you, and therefore we pass like Reb Meir. Okay, that's by Meiser. The Meiser is Mammon Gavai. Rabbi Yehuda Behektish. Where do we see that we pass like Rabbi Yehuda Behektish? Meaning by Me'ilah, there's no Milah B'Mezid, only B'Shagi. It's not to be learned. The halacha is, if you make a shliach to spend Mois Hektish for you, and the shliach is a pikeach and does his job, then you're moil, not the shliach. What happens? And Rashi quotes the Reisha of this Mishnah. So let's see that Rashi quoting the Reisha. Shilach biyat pikeach, Reisha hachitna. This is what it says in the Reisha. Shalach biyat cheresh shayt v'kam. If you sent money of hektish to be spent in the hands of a cheresh shayt v'kam, also shlichusan, if they did their shlichus, gizbar mo. The gizbar is moil because they did what the gizbar asked them to do. So the gizbar is the one who's moil. Lo also shlichusan. What if they didn't do what they were asked to do? Lo mo. The gizbar won't be moil because they didn't do the shlichus that the gizbar asked them to. What about shalach biyat pikeach? He sent it in the hands of a pikeach. V'niskar ad shelo higia etzal chaven. And the gizbar remembered that this is Moish Hektish, not Moish Chulam. So now, at the time it reaches the Chemeni's hands, the gizbar, the Mishalech, already knows that this is Moish Hektish. So it's not a shaying for him. It's amazing. The halacha is, v'kminin hasam kishehiskru shneim gizbar u'shliach. So by the time the money was given over to the Chemeni to do the purchase, the gizbar and the shliach had already known that this is Moish Hektish, and therefore they cannot be moil anymore. So shilach biyat pikeach v'niskar ad shelahi geis l'chameni. So now the shliach knows, the gizbar knows, so they for sure can't be moil because it's made. So who is the person left holding the bag? Who's the moil? Chenveni moil l'chashayotzi. When the chenveni uses that money, he will be moil. So you see here clearly that we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda Behektish, because this is a case that's saying b'mezid loy mal u'b'shoying mal. That's Rabbi Yehuda. That's definitely not Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir is the opposite. Frank the Gemara, you're telling me that we paskin like Rabbi Meir by Meiser, and Meiser's mom and Gavoyahu, because we have a Stam Mishnah. Rabbi Yehuda b'Meiser Mila Tanat. Do we not have a Stam Mishnah that agrees with Rabbi Yehuda as well by Meiser and says Meiser's mom and Hedgit? But now we learn. If someone's point his own Ma'aser Sheni, Moitzev Alav Chamishisa, he has to add a chaymek. Bein Mishaloi, say if it's his own Ma'aser Sheni, which everybody holds like that. But Bein Shenitin Loi B'matana, even if Ma'aser Sheni was given to him B'matana. So that Ma'aser Sheni that he received B'matana, if he wants to be pointed, he has to be Ma'aser French, because it's his now, because it was given to him B'matana. According to Reb Meir, Ma'aser Mammon Gavoyahu, you can't give it to Matana. You can put it into his hands, but he's not coined it. It was never yours, it was never his. And therefore, only if you're pointed, the original grower of the Ma'aser, there's a din, chaymich. But when you give it to a third party, it's not even his. So why would he have to add a chaymich? Money. According to Reb Meir, you can't give something away. You can't give Ma'aser away. Ma'aser Mammon Gavoyahu. Elolav Rabbi Yehuda, this Bryson must be going according to Rabbi Yehuda. It's a Stam Mishnah. Stam Mishnah supports Rabbi Yehuda as well. Let's say it's going according to Rabbi Meir. You had a kasha for me. How could he give away Ma'aser Sheni to Mammon Gavoya? He didn't give him Ma'aser Sheni. If it was already Ma'aser Sheni, Avada, he couldn't give it. He gave it before he was mafresh. He gave him tevel. Now, if he gave him tevel, then what if you say, if you hold that in tevel licked a ma'aser sheni, because why is it also? Because you were mafresh ma'aser sheni, so you still have the same problem. How could you give him the ma'aser sheni? But the kasava, this Mishnah holds matana shaloi hermu kami shaloi hermu dami. We don't say when you give him tevel, it's like there's ma'aser sheni in there. There's no ma'aser sheni in there. There's no ma'aser sheni content. It's all tevel content, and therefore, on tevel, that's not ma'aser sheni, does not yet have a din of mammon gavaya, and therefore you can gift it. Okay, Tashma, let's try another bright. Appointed netter revai shalom. If you're appointed your own netter revai, moitzav chamishis. There you have to add a chaymish. Bein mishaloi, say if it was always your netter revai, it grew by you. Bein shenit lebematana, or if it was given to you as a gift. Here we have the same problem. You can't say you gave it to tevel. Netter revai, the moment it's created, it's already netter revai. So how could you give him netter revai? We said netter revai is compared to meiser. How could you give netter revai? Money. If it's going to go to Reb Meir, how could Reb Meir allow revai to be given as a gift? It would not work. He's learning kodesh b'meiser. This Tana that we've just quoted about Poida has to learn kodesh b'meiser. Rashi says, the only way you know that when you're Poida, you let revai, you have to add a chaimish, is only if you learn out of meiser. So if you're learning it out of meiser, then it has to have the status of meiser, which is mammon gavaya. So how is it possible that you can give it away? Elamai matugan kontra Yehuda. The Gemara no. Going to Yosy smatter. You gave it when it was barely grown. After the flower fell off, there's just a little bulge. That's the fruit forming. Udaloi Reb Yosy, and it wouldn't hold like Reb Yosy. Damer smatter also pri. Reb Meir would hold. This price would hold that smatter is not a pri. It's not even a pri yet. So if it's not even a pri yet, then it's clearly not yet kadosh with kedushas revai. Therefore, you can still give it away. According to Yosy, the moment it's at that point where it's smatter, it's just a little bulge. There already it is considered revai, and you wouldn't be able to give it away. But if you don't hold like Rabbi Yosy, then this brashish works perfectly with Rabbi Meir, because we're speaking about smatter, and that's how you were able to give it away. And then when it becomes more developed, the person who received it would have to separate revai, treat it like revai. Gavaltik, Toshma. What happened if Moshach Heimenu Meiser Besela? You had Meiser, and I wanted to buy your Meiser from you. So I wanted to buy one seller worth of Meiser. So I went to your Meiser, and they made a Kinyan Mashiach on. But I didn't yet give over the money to be paid to the Meiser and make the Meiser go to Chulun, and then I'll take the money to Yerushalayim. The price of this produce went up, and now it's worth two sellers. So now the question is, when I want to be paid to the Meiser, do we say I was coined it already, and therefore I only have to pay one seller for it, or do I have to pay two sellers for it? The law is nice in seller. The person who bought it only has to pay a seller, umistaker b'seller, and he ended up making money because now the produce that he purchased is worth more than what he's paying for it. And he keeps the ma'aser sheni. So this clearly does not work with ma'aser sheni mammon gavayu money. Elamer Meir, my mistaker b'seller. Why in the world would I gain? You're saying that my Kinyan Mashiach works. Kinyan Mashiach does not work for mammon gavaya. The only way you could acquire mammon gavaya is with nesinas kesef. The Torah says v'nosanas kesef v'kam loy amarach one. So this Stam Mishnah has to go like Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda. Only according to Rabbi Yehuda would you be able to be kind of ma'aser with Mashiach, which is the type of Kinyan that you could only acquire something come handed with, not from hektish. So you have again a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda. You're right. You're right. We do have a Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Yehuda. So why is the Gemara saying we pass on like Rabbi Meir? Because the Stam Mishnah agrees with him. We have a Stam Mishnah that agrees with Rabbi Yehuda as well. The Gemara says, you found one Stam Mishnah that supports Rabbi Yehuda, but Rabbi Meir volcha trei stamim. For Rabbi Meir, you have two Stam Mishnahs. How do you have two Stam Mishnahs? We only quoted one. Zok the Gemara, Basam trei stamim. If you look Rashi, the third line from the bottom, Reb Meir Sosan Lon Trey Zimni B'Shtei Mekoymos. According to Reb Meir, in two different places, there's a Stam Mishnah like Reb Meir. Why? Because this Mishnah that we quoted about Revai is actually mentioned 2 times, because this Mishnah is traced in B'Shtei Mekoymos Tana Rebbe Mishnah Zu, the Kerem Revai. This Mishnah of Kerem Revai, where you see that it still holds that it has a din of Mama Gavoya, is once in Seder Zrayim and once in Edyos. So, since it's a Stam Mishnah that was repeated twice, we give it credence, and therefore we pass on like a mayor. Zokma, I don't understand. If you're going to tell me that the reason why a Stam Mishnah is halacha k'moisei is because if Rebbe just said it that way, that means halacha. So then Mali Chat Stam and Mali Trei Stam. Why should they be between 1 or 2? And that's how it remains. The Gemara doesn't answer that. But Amar Abnach Bar Yitzchak, halacha k'Reb Meir, we pass on like Reb Meir. Why? Because the Stam Mishnah that supports Reb Meir is Bechirosos, the chosen Mishnah. What does that mean, Dr. Rashi? Maseches Edges, Kari Bechirosa. Maseches Edges is called the choice Masechta. Shekol Devrayim Heidu Mipi Agedoil. Everything that's said in Maseches Edges was said over in the name of Gedolim. Therefore, Balach the Maison. So that's why we remain passing like a mayor who says that Meiser Mama in Gavayu. Gavaltik, I want to wish everybody a good Gebench Dior. Today is Cheshana Rabbah. Should be to a good Gebench Dior, a good Fittel. We should have a huge Shava Baruch to the Gashmis, and our learning should be a schus for Refu Shalema, for Avram, Tovia, Ben Carmelo Yosef.